Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first installment of Unnecessary Roughness, a podcast where me, Justin Connolly, and my co-host Nick Smith talk about all things NFL, football. Nick Smith, how are you today?
I'm doing great. We've been talking about starting this podcast for a few weeks now, and I'm just ready to get the ball rolling and talking about some football.
And one of the things we wanted to be known here is that I'm a huge Miami Dolphins fan, and he is a huge New York Jets fan. But with this podcast, what we're trying to do is have a level of professionalism and keep all bias of our teams out of this, so we're not going to – this is all at a professional level.
Oh, no, exactly. We know what our teams are, and we're not going to make them anything that they aren't, and we're just going to tell the truth, what we believe, how each team's going to be doing, how each player is doing, and there's no reason to lie or make anything up. So we're just trying to make the most factual information out there.
Right, and I mean, obviously, most of what we're talking about is going to be opinion based because this is what we believe from what we've seen, from what we've researched, and that it's what's going to be opinion based, but it's not going to revolve any bias because we're not going to crap over teams that we don't like or have any conflicts with that. We're going to say it and we're going to explain our reasonings why. So without further ado, let's get right into it. And I thought we were going to start off this podcast each week and doing a theme so far. And the theme of this week is quarterbacks. Is I think, you know what, this is the most important position in football. And the one thing I wanted to start off with is we saw 5 quarterbacks go in the first round of the 2018 NFL draft. We saw Baker Mayfield, the number 1 pick, the Heisman Trophy winner out of Oklahoma, Sam Darnold to the Jets, Josh Allen and Josh Rosen and Lamar Jackson all where teams traded up to get these guys, which really shows you the value of what these teams think in these quarterbacks.
Oh, quarterbacks they've always been important, but in today's NFL, you need someone that could throw the ball around. Running the ball is not as easy. It used to be defensive lines and linebackers are bigger and faster than ever. And offenses today, they got to be able to throw the ball, and teams that can throw the ball are going to win games.
It's true. And, I thought we'd start off really and go into which rookie is in the best scenario, which rookie's in the worst scenario, and guys that we think are really out of these rookies that were taken. And we're not just going to limit it to the 5 that were taken in the first round. But that might be the direction that we go. But, I mean, Mason Rudolph's still in the picture. Kyle Lauletta might be the successor there in New York for the Giants, not the Jets. But it's a huge, interesting thing, and I'm really excited to see what these guys do. And let's get right into it. I mean, best scenario. Nick, do you have a guy who's in the best scenario right now?
Just looking at the guys in the first round, it's going to be tough to say who these guys are going to start because a lot of them have veteran presences like Joe Flacco with Jackson, McCown with Darnold. Just looking at the names, Tyrod Taylor with Baker Mayfield. The only one that I think that actually may start the season right off the bat is Josh Allen at Buffalo. The only thing there is they have a pretty poor offense. Besides McCoy, their receivers are Kelvin Benjamin, who's been hurt most of the time, and Zay Jones, who hasn't really shown much yet. But if you're just looking at who's going to start, Josh Allen he has the best chance. But with the players around a quarterback that was drafted in the first round, Baker Mayfield, it's tough to say, even though he's on the Cleveland Browns. You got Josh Gordon, you got Jarvis Landry, you got Corey Coleman, and you got a pretty solid offensive line, so you can't really complain about the situation.
So we'd say Baker Mayfield is really your guy who's in the best scenario.
I would say Baker Mayfield's in the best scenario, and he's also going to be – I don't think he's going to start the year because I think Tyrod Taylor, he's proven he could do it, but it'll give him a chance to learn under a guy for a season or so, and I think that would put him in the best situation.
I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go from one Heisman Trophy winner to the next. I'm going to go Lamar Jackson, and I'm going to say that this is because of Lamar Jackson because, you know what, my basis of whether they're in the best or worst case scenario is only really because of – it's not just when they're going to – or what are the weapons around them, but it's whatever what's the case that they when did they step on the field? When did they start proving that they are really the guys that they drafted? And obviously, they drafted them for a reason. And I think Lamar Jackson, you look at what they're able to do with him, is just there's so many things you can do with Lamar Jackson. But I think obviously you got Alex Collins, who is starting to become the big running back in Baltimore. You bring in a bunch of guys like Michael Crabtree from the Oakland Raiders and John Brown from the Arizona Cardinals. You bring in Willie Snead from the Saints, who's still pretty young. Him and John Brown are younger presence receivers. You draft two very good receiving tight ends, Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews. And I think you really start – obviously the offensive line has always been pretty good in Baltimore, but only that. But you have a solid defense there in Baltimore. So I think that Lamar's not really going to find himself really playing with bad field position and playing behind in points all the time, which puts him in a good scenario. Now, what I say to Baltimore is, how are you going to use this guy? Because obviously you can't use a guy like Lamar Jackson like you can Joe Flacco, and that's something that John Harbaugh's got to figure out.
Yeah, definitely. Lamar Jackson, he's a dynamic player, of course, can run, got cannon of an arm. It just he can't run the ball with Lamar like you do with Cam Newton. He's a skinnier guy. You gotta make sure you protect him. He gotta be running outside the tackles. He can't be doing this read action, diving up the middle. He needs to know when to slide. He needs to know when to protect himself. Like, look what happened to RG3. You don't want another situation like that. You want to keep the guy as healthy as possible. And being the last pick in the first round, he has the least amount of expectations among the other guys drafted before him. There shouldn't be as much pressure. No one expects him to come in day one and to perform right away, because Joe Flacco should start the season. He's a Super Bowl winner. He's been on a downslope, but Jackson has a lot of upside. He's a dynamic player, and look at what Deshaun Watson did last year. If he could be anywhere close to what he did, the Ravens are going to be on the right path in the future.
I like very well said, and very and I really do think that if you can figure out what John Harbaugh can adjust to have, what it's like to have a run action, like a run threat quarterback. And I mean, obviously you bring up the Cam Newton comparisons tonight. That's interesting because of the fact that I thought that, you know what, there's maybe you put him in a system like Cam Newton, and then like the only thing is that you can't have him run up the middle. But I mean, you run like that power run offense where, you know what, instead of him running up the middle, you run to the edge, because you have a guy that, you know, is a lot like Jonathan Stewart and Alex Collins. And I think that you can do a lot of things with Jackson with that. And I think it really worked a lot with Cam Newton. But like you said, instead of running up the middle, he's got to hit the edge, because that's who he is. He's not going to be running up the middle against guys with the size that he is, and how I guess I would say fragile is the word, even though he hasn't really gotten hurt.
Yeah.
But he's never played against these NFL linebackers, especially especially a guy like Vontaze Burfict is a guy that the first guy that pops in my head. You got to play him twice a year. That's a guy that's always trying to headhunt.
Yeah, these linebackers and defensive line in the NFL, they're just faster and bigger than in college. And these guys are, it's crazy to say, but they're out to get you. And if they could get their starting quarterback out of the game, they're going to do it, because it's the best chance to make them win and make them look better. So you got to just protect yourself as a quarterback that runs as often as he probably will.
And now we're going to get into our the guy who's in the worst scenario, really, out of the rookie guys. And I'm going to go back to you, and I'm going to say it's Josh Allen. If you told me throughout this entire draft process who was going to be the best quarterback coming out of this draft class, I would have told you Josh Allen. Because I think I loved, even though he didn't play the level of competition that I think in college, obviously playing for Wyoming, which is like a lower level defensive Division I team, college team, and even then throwing up at least very unimpressive stats. He only had 19 touchdowns thrown and 9 interceptions. So I think that you don't really know what you're getting there, but I love what I see from him. He's got the biggest arm I've seen since Matt Stafford. He can throw off his back foot. He can run. He reminded everyone a lot of Carson Wentz. And you know what happened to Carson Wentz?
Yeah.
He was that close. He was really close to an MVP a trophy this year.
And then just an injury. Man, that's all that killed him, really. If he plays those last 3 games or so of the year, he probably throws 9 more touchdowns. And he probably easily wins MVP, honestly, if he stays healthy.
Right, and that's the comparisons that you're drawing with a guy like Josh Allen. So, I mean, that's really good to think of it, but he gets drafted at Buffalo. And you know what? This wasn't a shocker. We really did see this coming. But I look at Buffalo and I say, is this really the scenario you wanted to put a guy like Josh Allen in? Because I look at this and you know what? If he was playing for another team like maybe the Arizona Cardinals or the Jets or any other team that would have taken him, even the New York Giants or something like that, I look at it just a couple of teams and I say, you know what? This is a guy that could have learned under a couple of guys. Denver was another team I expected, maybe taking Josh Allen. He learns on a Case Keenum. He learns from John Elway. But you're in a quarterback battle with A.J. McCarron. And A.J. McCarron is a guy who started 4 games in the NFL, sitting behind Andy Dalton throughout his entire career. You don't know what you're getting with A.J. McCarron. Just like you're not getting with Josh Allen. I said Josh Allen was going to be the best quarterback in this draft class, but he needed to at least be able to adjust. He needed to fix the footwork. He needed to fix the throwing accuracy. He needed to fix what it is to adjust to an NFL system. And now he might just get, and like you said before, he might just get thrown right away into a starting role that he's not ready to get because he's got to battle A.J. McCarron. And do you really? I mean, obviously, if you're Sean McDermott, do you start A.J. McCarron right away, or do you go with the guy that's is much more athletic, has a bigger arm? I mean, what is the situation here in Buffalo? You put him in a bad spot with only, like you said, Michelle McCoy, a below-average offensive line that you got rid of your best offensive lineman to move up in the draft, and your receiving core is led by a guy who can't stay healthy, and a receiver who is – I mean, yeah, he was only a rookie last year, but I mean – you're putting all this pressure on him too. I mean, you don't have a lot of weapons around him.
Certainly not. Like I was saying before, like Josh Allen, he's probably going to start the year, in my opinion. Like he has a lot of talent, but it's a tough situation to be in just because of the poor offense. But just to change things up a bit, not to choose the same guy, I'm actually going to go with Josh Rosen, and who's in the worst spot, because I look at the Arizona Cardinals and I look at their wide receivers. I see a really old Larry Fitzgerald. Nothing against Larry Fitzgerald. He's easily a Hall of Famer, but he's certainly up there in age. And besides Fitzgerald, off the top of my head, I can't even think of another receiver on that team. I'm not even sure who their tight end is. Of course, they have a great running back in David Johnson. He can easily carry the load, take pressure off him. Josh Rosen won't start the year as quarterback for the Cardinals just because you can't pay a guy $20 million in Sam Bradford and put him on the bench. Like, that just doesn't happen in the NFL. You can't pay a backup that much money, and he's going to play, and Sam Bradford probably will get hurt, as he always does, and Rosen's going to be thrown in there. Hopefully Fitz is healthy at the time, because if Fitz isn't healthy, and if maybe David Johnson gets another setback, either one of them, if either of them are hurt, it's going to be a really tough spot for him to be in because he's going to have no weapons around him at all. And the Cardinals weren't a good team last year, and I don't think they got too much better. So it's definitely going to be tough for Rosen. A lot of it depends on Bradford. If Bradford gets hurt, Rosen's coming in. If not, at least it gives him a little bit more time to learn under the system, not have too much pressure on him, but I can't rely on Sam Bradford staying healthy, and that's going to put Rosen in a tough spot, I believe. Some of the other guys, Darnold, being with the Jets, of course, it's a huge place. Not much expectation for the team, but New York is, of course, a huge market. But he does have some guys around him at least. Quincy Enunwa just came off a neck injury. That's tough. Curse is a solid receiver, and we don't know about Robbie Anderson with the whole police getting arrested thing, so NFL probably suspend him at some point. Bilal Powell, running back. They actually just signed. Who did they sign in the offseason? They signed a running back.
Who? The Jets?
Yeah.
Isaiah Crowell.
He's solid. He's not awful. He's he's a decent guy. That at least the Jets have some things around him. Just yeah, Arizona besides Fitz and David Johnson, I just don't see any weapons much on Arizona to really help out Rosen if he does get in that situation.
It's funny that you say that Josh Rosen is. I think I agree with you. I think he's in a tough spot. I think that he just is in a bad position with like a little bit of like playmakers around him. But the fact is, I really am going to pick him as my rookie quarterback that's going to be the most successful. But because I think that Josh Rosen was a guy that he seems like it takes a lot of things personally, and that's not always a bad thing. Because I think that for the longest time, this was the guy. This was the guy that was going to take in the first number one pick, the overall pick, and really he was going to do something with it. And he gets taken 10th because Sam Darnold passes him up. Josh Allen passes him up. Hell, Baker Mayfield, there was no reason before even this all came out that he was going to get taken before Rosen. He was the 4th quarterback off the board. And this was a guy that believes, and you know what? Every quarterback believes that they're the best. But I think that with Josh Rosen, the reason why people didn't take him already was because of I guess some of the things he said to the media, or he gets hurt maybe a couple more times than he should. And it's just a matter of, Josh Rosen is a very talented quarterback, maybe the most talented quarterback in this draft class. This is definitely a guy that watching NFL Network and watching his tape and stuff like that, this was the guy that was ready to start day one. If you had to start a guy day one, I would say Sam Darnold's in that same boat. But I mean, it goes back to just, Josh Rosen, he can throw the ball, and with precise accuracy, it's mind-blowing. The balls that he's able to throw into tight windows, and he was able to do that at UCLA with a very below average wide receiving core. So I think that adds more value to what you're doing with Josh Rosen. And I think that with this guy, you are getting a great quarterback, a guy that's absolutely ready and is going to bring the fire, because he is now with that whole thing of there's been 9 guys taken before me. And like I said, this is a guy that takes things personally. He has had that grit compared to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was a guy that slid way farther down than he should. Josh Rosen didn't fall nearly as far as Aaron Rodgers did, but this is a guy that's going to make him pay. As long as you keep building around him. Obviously, you add Christian Kirk in the 2nd round, which is very helpful. A Glendale native playing for his favorite NFL team, learning under a guy like Larry Fitzgerald, they can really start to build the chemistry very early. You got a young tight end core. Obviously, Ricky Seals-Jones was a guy that stepped up a couple games for the Cardinals last year. He's learning under Jermaine Gresham. You have a pretty decent offensive line to begin with, and we're forgetting the big picture of what's really going to bring this Arizona Cardinals team, make their offense a little bit more dynamic. They get David Johnson back. They get David Johnson back, and you know how electric he was 2 seasons ago? This was the best running back in football 2 seasons ago. I mean, that's the one thing you forget. We get David Johnson back. We get to watch David Johnson play for the Arizona Cardinals uniform again. I think that's if there's one guy that's going to help make Josh Rosen's life easier for the time being, it's David Johnson. But as long as you keep building around this receiving core and you build around this tight end and you just build around Rosen in general, you're going to have a very successful quarterback. You're going to have a franchise quarterback.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. Rosen has great talent. And, of course, David Johnson, in my eyes, he's definitely a top 3 running back in the NFL. It's always great to have a great running game. It makes it so much easier on any rookie quarterback. Just right now, in the current moment, he's coming off a major injury last year. He missed the entire season. Fitz is really old. Just looking at the weapons on the other teams, they may have a little bit better weapons. The Bills are pretty bad, but Allen's going to start right away, in my opinion, so I think that just gives him a little boost for the scenario he's in. He's going to get the experience. He may not get the mentorship that he needs that Rosen may get with Bradford, but I would say they're neck and neck with being in the situations that they're in, but I figured just to change it up and go with Rosen, so that's why I
Or the
went there.
worst scenario.
Yeah.
So who do you think is going to be the best quarterback in this draft class?
This season or when
In overall, that's what I'm going with Josh Rosen. I said in this career, out of all these guys that he's drafted, Josh Rosen's going to be the best out of all of them.
Looking at these guys and the way the NFL is going, I could see Lamar Jackson I could see him being almost like Deshaun Watson. If he could be anywhere near what Deshaun Watson was last year, being a mobile quarterback, it just brings such a different dynamic to the game and for your offense. Like a play could break down, you could get 15 yards with your feet. Perfect coverage everywhere. Run up the middle and slide for 6. It changes the game. It's something all defenses have to worry about at all times. Guy has an arm. The Ravens are well coached, always got a good defense, usually a good running game. If they just get maybe an extra weapon here or there, the tight ends are young. I think Jackson, if they could keep a good core team together, they could be great. Baker, he's on the Browns. Like, you got a good team around now, but the Browns are always going to mess up somewhere down the line. But so I'm gonna take Jackson in this situation.
Well, it's funny that you bring up Deshaun Watson because one thing I wanted to be known is a lot of people were asking why was Baker Mayfield taken number 1? Why was he the first quarterback off the board and everyone couldn't believe it? He didn't have what Darnold had. He didn't have what Rosen had. He doesn't have what Josh Allen has. I think that if there's one person Baker Mayfield's got to thank for him being number 1 overall, it's not Hugh Jackson. It's not the Browns quarterback needs. It's Deshaun Watson. Because you know what? The most underrated quality, I said last year, and I said this to my brother Ryan, that we discussed this, that Deshaun Watson was going to be the best quarterback of that draft class because of the sole fact that he had one quality out of all those quarterbacks that none of them had. This man, when the lights were the brightest, performed. And every time in crunch time, you saw Deshaun Watson wearing that orange uniform for Clemson, play and was clutch. That's what Baker Mayfield is. He has that clutch factor. When the lights are the brightest, this man doesn't throw interceptions. He doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't make bad plays. He makes great plays. He makes plays with his feet. He wins games. He brought Oklahoma all the way to that Rose Bowl game, which was undoubtedly one of the greatest games I've ever seen. And it was just unfortunate that he just a couple things went wrong. He had his field goal blocked that Georgia made the defense, which was carried by that Oklahoma offense, which I thought that Oklahoma defense wasn't really that good to begin with. You can only carry that defense so far against the electric offense that had both, obviously, Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. So I think that if Baker Mayfield might be the most successful quarterback if he's able to keep that electricity and clutch factor that he has. And that's my number 2 guy, really, because I think that this is the reason why the Browns drafted him, because of the fact that when the lights are the brightest, this is the guy that makes the plays. But moving from these young quarterbacks, we're really going to go into the guys that we know have their starting spots right away. Guys that we know this is going to be the guy week 1. We don't really know where any of these rookie quarterbacks are going to fall, but just a couple of guys. I mean, and we have a really interesting pool of guys, but I think we have a pretty good showing of who we think is going to be, who's going to outperform what they did last year, is really going to be in the same pack as where they are, who's going to be below average, and really I could think of a couple of guys that might lose their job after this year. So let's go into the good. Let's start with the good. Veteran guy, we're going to go into a couple. Name me one of your guys that you see excelling next year from what they did last season.
I'm going to start right off the bat and go with the Oakland Raiders and Derek Carr. Guy, he had a great season 2 years ago, threw like 30 touchdowns or so, brought Oakland to the playoffs. And last season, Oakland struggled offensively. Running game wasn't all that good with Marshawn Lynch. Amari Cooper was dropping balls, and Derek Carr had a back injury in like week 3 or 4 or so, and I think that hindered him for most of the season. He didn't look like the same guy. Some of his throws were off. Like I said, drop balls didn't help, but over the offseason, they certainly added some weapons. They did lose Crabtree. They brought in Jordy Nelson, though, who I think is one of the best receivers in the game when healthy. Of course, he does.
Don't forget they also traded a third-round pick for Martavis
Yeah,
Bryant
Martavis
from the
Bryant. Yeah,
Steelers.
it's huge. He didn't do much for the Steelers last year, but he's a dynamic player. Put him in a right spot, give him a chance to get one-on-one coverage. And when you're going to have Amari Cooper probably playing in the slot, Nelson and Bryant on the ends, that's a dynamic offense right there. And Carr, he's shown he could play. He shows he could win. He's made the playoffs before. He was in the MVP race 2 years ago, and I think he has to bounce back. Oakland also has a pretty solid offensive line. I can only see it going up for him, and I don't think he's going to repeat what he did last year.
I mean, I would put Derek Carr around the same as, you know what, he's got a couple of other guys that make him a little bit better. I mean, I would put him in the middle of the pack. I don't see him doing it. I mean, I could see him doing a little bit better, but not somebody that I think is going to make a substantial jump from what they did last season. But I'm expecting a good year from Derek Carr, just not as good as a guy I'm going to go in the same division, in the same, very close to where they are, the Los Angeles Chargers of Phillip Rivers. I mean, this is his time. This is Phillip Rivers' time because of the fact that, you know what, now look at how good they were. You know what, they had a slow start last year. They went 1-4. They turned that 1-4 into a 9-7 season and just missed the playoffs by a hair.
Just a few missed field goals in the early weeks, and 2 wins right there they could have had.
It really is. And I think that, you know what, now with Phillip Rivers, you look at the guys they got around them. You know, they get Forrest Lamp back, was a guy that was one of their top picks last year. He's going to be able to protect him. They get Mike Williams back too, who's a guy that was their first round pick last year, who's a dynamic receiver, can go up and play the ball. Got Keenan Allen, they got Travis Benjamin, they got Tyrell Williams, and Melvin Gordon, and I can't think of his first name, Esker. That's one of their running backs, and he just he's got so much around him, and you know what? The thing that helps him a lot is now the defense is finally coming together. I mean, Kerry Williams was one of the best shutdown corners. What he was able to do is incredible, and he's just a matter of, you know what? Now Phillip Rivers has got all this around him. It's all on him now because he's getting up in there in age. He's only got a couple more seasons left in him. But I think that, you know what, this is a time where Phillip Rivers is really going to turn it around. And the one thing that's the roadblock right now is obviously it's yesterday, terrible news from Los Angeles Chargers. New star, the guy that was going to replace Antonio Gates, it looked so good. Hunter Henry tears his ACL, and I can't help but feel for Hunter Henry because, you know what, this was his time to really shine. And I mean, it hurts me as a fantasy owner because that was one of the guys that I was looking to really be a factor on my fantasy team. But I really do feel for the Chargers right now because I thought that you know what, Phillip Rivers had a complete offense, and Hunter Henry getting hurt, but I don't think I don't. And you know Phillip Rivers, because he had Antonio Gates, that man loves throwing to his tight end. So, but I'm still expecting a big year from Phillip Rivers.
Oh no, I can certainly agree with that. Phillip Rivers is actually probably my number 2 guy. I've always liked Phillip Rivers. I always thought he was great. Like you said, the defense has improved drastically, and this is probably one of the best Chargers teams since they had LaDainian Tomlinson all those years ago. They went to the playoffs multiple years in a row back then with Phillip Rivers, and I think the Chargers are probably the best team in that division, Oakland being second. And the Chargers they're going up, and Phillip Rivers may be up there in age, but he's still got it, definitely. I see them winning that division, and Rivers is going to have a pretty solid year. Another guy that I think is looking through these quarterbacks, I think is going to have a pretty good year. Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota now. They have a great defense. It always helps any quarterback. When you don't have to play 20 points behind, playing catch up. It just makes it so much easier as a quarterback, not having to throw the ball 20 yards down the field every play. If you know you're going to be in a close game, you don't have to take that unnecessary throw into third and long to try to force something. They got great receivers. They got Adam Thielen, who's just been remarkable over these last few years. Stephon Diggs, dynamic as all can be. Solid running backs, and Cook and Murray and Rudolph at tight end. They just got everything you need for an offense. And Kirk Cousins, he's getting paid millions. He better show up to play, because when you're getting paid that much. But I guess that's just today's NFL. Quarterbacks are making a whole lot of money today. And what the offense they have and the great defense they had last year, I just see a great season for Kirk Cousins.
I really agree with you that Kirk Cousins is one of my guys this year to just be playing lights out, playing the way that I know that Kirk Cousins can play. And I said at the moment that RG3 got hurt for those couple games before the playoffs, and Kirk Cousins stood in for him for 2 games to finish the season and help the Redskins clinch that division. I think it was 2013 when that happened.
Yeah, that
sounds about right. And I was like, this guy's going to be a star. That's what it is. And I think that he just wasn't in the right system. Well, I wouldn't say the system. I just didn't think he had the right talent around him. You know what? Redskins have a very good offensive line. I think they have a better offensive line than the Minnesota Vikings. But the fact is that now you go from having Pierre Garçon, obviously he played for San Fran last year, and Terrell Pryor, who is a one-hit wonder, Josh Dotson, he'll be better. He's one of my guys that I'm expecting to really step into a good role, but in a very injured-prone Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis, and now you get, like you said, you get Stephon Diggs, the miracle Minneapolis guy. I mean, but all points aside, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, Laquan Treadwell, if he decides that he's going to start living up to the first-round potential. And you get such a dynamic running back in Dalvin Cook, who is one of my favorite guys coming out of the draft last year. I just think he's a very versatile guy. And we saw that for the majority of it. And then just him and Watson, man, that hurt. I loved watching both those guys play. And both 2 rookies getting hurt. It was just tragic to watch that happen. But you get all these talent around you, and Kirk Cousins. But I'm going to go with my next pick. And this might be a shocker to you. It might be a shocker to everyone. I'm going Eli Manning. It's because of the fact that, you know what, now is finally the time where I look at Eli Manning and I say, hey, now you finally have some talent around you. You deal with Eric Flowers for a couple years, I get it. But now you have Nate Solder, one of the best left tackles in football, because he's been playing for Tom Brady. He's been doing things right for Tom Brady for a lot of years. You add Will Hernandez, who is another big dog guard. And Will Hernandez is a guy, I love that second-round pick because of the fact of what he brings to it, and I thought he was a first-round talent guard. I really did. And who do you pick with the second overall pick? You grab a man who is able to carry an offense as far as he could. Saquon Barkley could have been the best scenario for Eli Manning, because now you have a guy that you can throw the ball to, you can hand the ball off to. Hell, you want to toss it to him and let him throw the ball? He can do that too. There is nothing that this man Saquon Barkley can't do. And that just adds a whole different talent to this Giants team. And you get Odell back. You have Sterling Shepard. You have a guy, I heard Travis Rudolph is starting to come in a little bit for the Giants. You have
Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram is still another dynamic tight end that they grab. And here's the thing is, I am going to defend Eli Manning to the grave. Because you know what? I believe that everyone said, oh, you know what? He's not good anymore. He was never really that good. Well, here's the thing about Eli, and you don't understand. It was one of the things you brought up with Kirk Cousins is what made me think about Eli in the first place. You're constantly playing from behind because you can't get your defense isn't doing their job. Obviously, 2 years ago was a different story, but last year your defense isn't doing their job. You're constantly behind the sticks because you keep getting sacked. You don't have a run game, and now you have to force these passes because you're playing 3rd and 12, 2nd and long. You need to gain yardage, and he's taken pressure from his offensive line being as bad as they were. He doesn't have a run game to complement him, and that's what you have to do. When you're a quarterback and you're behind the sticks, you try to make plays in order to keep your team in there. And you know what? Yeah, he's got to make a couple of questionable throws, but that's the situation that he's in. And all those three things, I think, for the most part, were fixed. If the Giants kept guys like Weston Richburg and Justin Pugh, I'd be telling you that this man is going to have a tremendous season because he's got nothing to worry about. The right side on the offensive line looks a little weak for the Giants right now. But I think that, you know what, you add Saquon Barkley, you have Evan Ingram filling into those shoes, you get Odell back. They added Jonathan Stewart too. That's a goal line back. You don't have to worry about third and short anymore because that's a guy that's going to power you through. When you're Eli Manning, now you finally can play the way you play. And that's where we're going to see an old Eli back. And that's why I'm really excited for the New York Giants because I think they're going to get their quarterback back.
Oh, no, definitely for Eli. Eli's always been a risk taker. He's always thrown a lot of interceptions, but the guy's a 2-time Super Bowl champion, and he finds ways to pull through games.
You can't take that away from him.
No, you definitely can't. Even as a New York Jets fan, I have to admit, man, Eli, he's done a really good job with his time as a Giant. Arguably has the best receiver in NFL on his team. He has the best running back he's had since Tiki Barber now on his team, and the offensive line has improved. And it's tough to play quarterback when you have 1 second to throw the ball and you're getting sacked every other play. So last year it was rough on Eli. Of course, the Giants had a really poor season, but he can only go up. And honestly, I expect a really good year. They're not going to win the division, of course, because the Eagles are just head and shoulders above almost majority of the teams in that division. But Eli, he got Shepard, he has Odell, and adding a running back such as Barkley, it's only going to make it easier on him. Even at the old age that he currently is at, Eli's going to produce this year, I believe, and he'll probably be the second best quarterback in that division this year.
Oh, behind Carson Wentz.
Yeah, behind Carson. That Carson Wentz, if he stays healthy this year, he'll have another MVP season, in my opinion. The offensive line is unreal. The talent at receiver, it's much better than what he had his rookie season, and last year was awesome. And Wentz is probably going to go for 35 touchdowns again, I think, and the Eagles are probably going to see another 13-win season, in my opinion.
Well, now that we talked about 4 guys that we're going to see better. We're going to see them play better next year. Let's talk about a couple of guys that we think aren't going to live up to the expectations that they have, really. And the first, what's the first guy that comes to your mind when you say this? Like, not going to live up to the expectations that maybe the team that has him has.
There's a couple guys that come to mind right away. I only say Jimmy Garoppolo because he of course was undefeated last year. It's tough to see him repeat that again. I actually think he's going to have a solid year, but to expect him to be as good as he was last year, I find that hard to believe. But I'm actually going to go with Alex Smith on the Washington Redskins. Smith has never been a great quarterback. He's a solid game manager as he was with KC. KC actually had a dynamic offense with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, running back. They had Ware and who was the rookie they had last year?
Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt, yeah. He had a great start of the season. He ended up a little bit slower, but when
still the NFL's leading rusher.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Alex Smith, he's just going from a great offense to the Washington Redskins. I just don't think he's going to perform as well as he was. The Redskins, they're all right. They're nothing special, but just leaving a team like the Chiefs, I think it's going to be tough for him. Let me see if I can find their receivers real quick for the Redskins.
The Redskins, they're gonna have Josh Dotson.
Yeah.
They're gonna have. I think they still have Terrell Pryor, if I'm mistaken.
Oh no, Terrell Pryor's a Jet.
Oh yeah, you know what?
Terrell
You're right.
Pryor's a Jet. At running back, they have Rob Kelly. nothing.
Well, they just
special.
drafted. Well, I think it's going to make it a little bit easier. They just drafted Darius Geis from LSU, who brings him a downhill runner. But I haven't really seen enough of Darius Geis in the pass game really to say, you know what, this is a guy that's going to take over that role. Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, Jamison Crowder's solid. I just know I had him on my fantasy team last year. He's not your great guy. He's not gonna have explode and go off for a huge game, but he'll get you six catches for like 70 yards or so. Jordan Reed, he's great. He's awesome, but can you rely on him to be healthy? And that's a tough guess because he hasn't shown that he can stay healthy. And Alex Smith, he's a good game manager, but is he going to go out there and win games for you? I think that's going to be tough for him.
I think it really is tough, especially when you guys like Alex Smith and you have guys like Jimmy Garoppolo and Matt Stafford and all these guys that are worth all this money, and you give them and you throw all this money at them. And it's tough because I just don't think that is anybody really worth that amount of money? I mean, $137 million for Garoppolo, $96 million for Alex Smith. I would say Stafford's worth the money. Maybe $130 million. I mean,
compared to those guys, yeah, Stafford's probably worth it the most.
But I mean, Stafford's worth has made his worth. He's been very consistent for the Lions, and was a guy I wish I was talking about as a guy that I think are going to exceed expectations. Because now I think Matt Stafford finally has a run game to complement him. But going back to Alex Smith, I just think that, you know what, he's a good quarterback. I think he's starting potential. Obviously, he's a starter in this league, but I think it's tough when you don't have when you're the Redskins, you don't have the dynamic playmakers that you do when you're with KC. You don't have obviously Kareem Hunt's one year. We'll see how he does again this year. But you don't have Tyreek Hill. That's an explosive playmaker right there. You don't have Travis Kelce. When Gronk's hurt, that's the best tight end in the league. I think that you're just and you don't have an Andy Reid system. Andy Reid's system worked perfectly for Alex Smith, and I think that it was able to go as far as he could with it. But I think that, you know what, where you're Alex Smith, you're not dealing with the same guys. You're going to rely more on your playmaking ability, let alone the playmaking ability of others around you, which is really what I think has been able to get Alex Smith over the top as one of the better quarterbacks of last year. And we'll see. I mean, obviously, we'll see. We'll see what Jay Gruden's going to be able to do with him, and you know what, I wish him the best because you know what, he's going to be playing against a tough division, and I truly believe that. But we really said those were the two guys that I think we thought were really going to below expectation. I think the one thing we were going to go lower is guys I think whose jobs are on the line this year, and here we go. If there's one thing that is not going to show my bias, the first guy that I think coming off the board where it says your job's on the line this year is Miami Dolphins quarterback Ryan Tannehill. Because you know what? It's really tough for a guy to come back from not one but two knee injuries that just come in and step in right away. This is a guy that everyone's been looking to replace him for even before Adam Gase got there. This was a guy that, you know what, maybe he's been consistent. He's been consistently good, but he hasn't wowed anybody. He hasn't really shown that franchise quarterback ability. I love the fact that Ryan Tannehill can run as much as he can throw. But, I mean, you got to prove that you can do it. And you know what? You don't have a lot of excuses anymore because you know what? You have a good running game anymore. The offensive line's gotten much better. You draft Laramie Tunsil was the best player in the draft 2 years ago. Obviously, the marijuana scandal that dropped them all the way to 13 to the Dolphins was huge for them. And he's been trying to adjust being back to left tackle after he played guard his first year. But you bring in Josh Sitton, who's been a Pro Bowl lineman almost every season he's been in the league. You bring in a bunch of playmakers. You have Devontae Parker. You have Danny Amendola, who's won 2 Super Bowls. Albert Wilson was a guy that was a playmaker for Kansas City. Kenny Drake has stepped into a starting role. You have Frank Gore. I mean, when you're Ryan Tannehill, there's no more room for error. And I think that you just need to start really focusing in. And you know what? This is the year. If you don't perform to the standards of which you set, you're going to get replaced. And that's the first guy that comes to mind when I think, if you don't perform to the standards that you were set for in Adam Gase's system, in this with all these playmakers around you, I mean, it's your time to get replaced.
No, I certainly agree. Ryan Tannehill, he's been in the league for a decent amount of years now.
I think 5 or 6.
Yeah, he's not young, but
I think he was drafted in 2012, so this is going to be his 6th season.
You got. It's your time to shine, and you can't just keep getting hurt and expect the team to keep waiting on you. They're going to find a replacement sooner or later, and this is a big year for him. My guy I'm actually going to go with Andrew Luck. Guy has been injured year after year, and I think this is a huge year for him. If he can't show he can stay healthy, I think the Colts may go another route. Like, the dude has all the talent in the world. He has legs, he has the arm, he has the head, but he just can't stay on the field. I don't know if it's a mental thing or if it's actually a physical thing, but last year it seemed like he was going to play, and they just kept pushing him off, and he just never got time on the field. And Andrew Luck, like I said, he has great talent. He got to show he can stay healthy. He got to play a full season. Does he have the best weapons around him? No. He has T.Y. Hilton, explosive wide receiver. He can make plays down the field. They lost Frank Gore at running back.
They don't really have a bunch of running backs. They're putting a lot of pressure on Marlon Mack, who didn't get a lot of carries to begin with last year with the Colts.
No, not at all. I know their offensive line was god-awful when he was playing. I don't think it's gotten.
They added Braden Smith. Yeah. They added Quentin Nelson. So they're pretty set at guard. But I think Anthony Costanzo is a guy that's been up in the air, to say the least. I think he battled a little bit around the offensive line, but I think that you really don't have a lot of people to throw. I mean, Eric Ebron, you add him in. I think he's a good tight end. He just didn't fit with Matt Stafford in the offense.
Yeah.
So, we'll see with Andrew Luck. I still think he's the dude in Indianapolis because of just what he's been able to do.
He has great talent. I just feel it's tough for a franchise to just rely on a guy that can't stay on the field.
No, and I completely agree with you because of the fact that, you know what, the best thing you can be in football as two former football players
is durable.
Is be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Is just be able to play. That's the number one thing, is just being able to get on the field. And he hasn't been that. So I think, when you have a star-level talent as Andrew Luck, what are you going to do when you can't play? That's an interesting thing that you would say that. Let's go to a guy we talked about earlier today because age is knocking on the door, and they just brought in a young guy, Joe Flacco. It's a guy that, it was never really worth the amount of money he got after the Super Bowl run, and he's been playing average football for a above average team. And I think that's been one of the factors that they've been able to do is obviously, he hasn't had the wide receivers that he had obviously when he had the Super Bowl run. You didn't have in your prime Torrey Smith. You didn't have Anquan Bolden. You didn't have Dennis Pitta, and you haven't had Dennis Pitta for a couple of years because that's a guy that was really good but couldn't stay healthy. So I think that, there's been a couple of factors that really have affected Baltimore and Joe Flacco. I think the biggest thing that affected him was not having Ray Rice because Ray Rice was a Pro Bowl running back. But you were supposed to be paid all this money to start making plays. It's not like you had bad talent around you. You just didn't have the talent they used to, and it showed. But now all the pressure's on you because now Ozzie Newsome, with his last draft ever, is looking to replace you because he brings in the most dynamic quarterback in this draft, if not one of the most exciting playmakers. I would say Saquon Barkley is a more explosive, dynamic, electric playmaker than him, but Lamar Jackson is second in my opinion. And now what are you going to do? What are you going to do when your back is against the wall because you bring in this Heisman Trophy, electric playmaker? You got to do something with it or you're going to get replaced.
Oh, no, certainly. And Flacco has no excuses now. He has weapons at wide receiver. Ravens just added Michael Crabtree. He's had a couple great seasons on Oakland. Willie Snead was a little off last year. He had the suspension at the beginning of the year. But the year before with Drew Brees, Willie Snead had a fantastic season. John Brown from Arizona, came from Arizona. Also another guy who he's shown he could play. And Flacco got three solid
Another
options.
guy I see there is still a guy that I think is a downfield threat. How about Rashad Perriman? Hasn't been too bad. I mean, he's got to stay healthy too.
Yeah, true. Health is huge. Like you said before, injuries kill. And the thing with Ray Rice, it wasn't an injury, but just losing a guy like that, it really hurts a team. You rely on your running game as Baltimore, as they always have. And when you lose your number one guy, it's not easy to bounce back from. But Flacco has playmakers around him now. And like you said, with Lamar Jackson just sitting behind him, he's going to have to make some plays this year to make sure he keeps his job going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation for Joe Flacco. I think the last guy we want to talk about really is a guy that his job is clicking. It's time. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go into one more quarterback after this. It's Andy Dalton. And I think that Andy Dalton is just a guy that, you know what, he's been good. He's been able to get them to the playoffs, but he hasn't really been able to get them over that hump. He just hasn't been the star-level guy that I know that they wish that they had. You know, you bring in a bunch of running backs that I think that all have been good for them within his time being there. Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill and now Joe Mixon. He hasn't really had a lot to complain about. He had Mohamed Sanu. He has AJ Green. He has AJ Green. AJ Green, in my mind, is no doubt a top 3 receiver in this league. It goes Brown, Julio, AJ Green, no doubt, no questions asked. But you have a top level receiver like that, and you still can't. Struggling to make the playoffs, it just doesn't make any sense. Yes, Tyler Eifert's a great tight end and keeps getting hurt, and maybe your offensive line has struggled a little bit. But I mean, when you're Andy Dalton, this is make or break time, because you know what? The Bengals are going to sit down after this season if you don't perform and say, you know what? Maybe it is time. Maybe it's time that we look in a different direction, because something within these last couple of years hasn't been working, and I think they're going to find out that it's you, Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton, like he's been all right. He's been mediocre. He hasn't been great, and he's been poor at some times, but for the most part, he's been mediocre. And in the NFL, if you're gonna win playoff games, you need a good to great quarterback. It's not this defense wins championships, in my opinion, anymore. Defense certainly does help, but you need a quarterback that can throw the ball and that you can rely on each and every week. And Andy Dalton, in my opinion, just hasn't showed that in these last few years. And he has, like you said, AJ Green, definitely a top 5 receiver. He could do it all. He could run the routes. He could go get the long ball. He's fantastic. Tyler Eifert, another guy. He's probably a top 5 tight end when healthy. Yeah, when healthy is for sure. But he has weapons. He has great running backs. And the defense is solid too. There's no reason why this team shouldn't be making the playoffs, especially the last few years. They're playing the Browns twice a year. Of course, they're playing Pittsburgh, who's another good team. And the Ravens are solid, but you got to find a way you got to make the playoffs. And for the Bengals, they got to win playoff games. I don't even remember the last time they won a playoff game. It's been that long.
The Bengals, I don't even think they won a playoff game since the 90s.
Yeah, because it's been a drought. How Marvin Lewis even still has a head coaching job after all these years, I don't know. But one of them got to go.
I mean, how does Hugh Jackson have a coaching job after winning 1 game in 2 seasons?
Yeah,
it's crazy. Sometimes you just really don't know. And I want to kind of end this off with one quarterback that comes to mind when I say, you know what, this is the thing where it's I really feel bad that it's come to this point in this man's career where, you know, he just needs a little bit of help. And he's not going to get that this season, I don't think. And it's sad to see, because this is one of the most electric playmakers in this league, and it's Russell Wilson. You've been trying to fix this running game since Marshawn Lynch left, and you really just haven't found the guy to help this running game. I think they found him. I think that, you know what, everyone was like, wow, you took Rashad Penny, who on most teams was a 3rd, 4th round pick. He really wasn't. I think this is a huge acquisition for the Seattle Seahawks to add this guy at running back, because I think he just does a lot of things right. And if you watched his last collegiate game for San Diego State, man had 300 some all-purpose yards, 4 touchdowns against Army. I mean, this man can do everything. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. Hell, he is a huge, big kick returner too. He has brought back multiple kickoff returns for touchdowns after San Diego State. It was one of those things. You know what? Donnell Pumphrey was their all-time leading rusher. Penny comes in and just wipes the floor with that record. And this is a guy that I loved watching him stand because he's a downhill runner. He doesn't move lateral. He just goes forward. That's one of those things that I value in a running back is, you know what? You don't go east to west. He's a north-south running back. That's a guy that you want on your team. And I think that's going to help you out. But this has got to be one of the most it's a mess up front in the offensive line. It just is. And for you to not really even attempt to pick up a free agent, to draft one, it's just you're putting way too much pressure on Russell Wilson, who is a Pro Bowl, one of the best quarterbacks in this league, veteran guy, Super Bowl winner guy. And you know what? The receiving core is not as good. You know what? They have Doug Baldwin. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Tyler Lockett. I'm not a fan. I mean, they get rid of Paul Richardson. You're really playing with fire here. They lose Jimmy Graham, so you don't have a tight end presence. I think Luke Wilson's okay. I think he's good. Is he great? No. He's very average. But I think you're putting a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson to just go out there and say, hey, this is what you have. It's below average. Go play the Rams twice a year, who has got one of the best defenses in the league. How are you gonna send this guy out there who is, you know what, this is your guy, and you know what, he might even get hurt from this because I think that you just look at this offensive line and you look at this receiving core, he's a lot of pressures on Russell Wilson this year.
Oh, I'm pretty sure he was playing hurt last year at most of the point. He was nagging through an injury, and to add on top of what happened on the offensive side, you gotta look at what happened on the defensive side as well. They lost Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas.
They didn't lose Earl Thomas yet.
Didn't lose Earl Thomas yet, but
no. They lost.
I know they lost Sherman, and but
they lost Michael Bennett.
Yeah, Bennett. They lost.
I mean, they still have Bobby Wagner, and that's the guy that's been holding down their defense. But
still, though, you're losing dynamic players on defense, and you're ready to have a awful offensive line,
and they're getting hurt too. I mean, you lose Sheldon Richardson.
Yeah.
And you know him. You know about firsthand what Sheldon Richardson could do to defense or to offensive lines.
He's a great player. He has problems off the field, of course. He's a little bit of a nutcase, but he could play when he's on the field. But yeah, like you said, Russell Wilson, he's not going to be in a good spot, and Seattle's probably going to be the worst team in that division this year because I think the Rams will easily win that division. 49ers probably come in second, and I think Cardinals probably be in third. Just the way the teams are shaping up. Russell Wilson, like you said, he's a Pro Bowl quarterback, but this year he's really going to have to shoulder the load, and he's going to have to play phenomenal just to make this team average, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just tough. We're going to have to see Russell Wilson put a lot of pressure on himself to go out there and make plays, and it's really just him. It's Doug Baldwin, and we'll see if Rashad Penny can translate what he did in college to the NFL, because obviously he did play for San Diego State, a below the halfway mark on the talent level in college football in Division I, and it's just we'll see how he can translate to playing against NFL defenses, and that's really the one thing that you got to look at when you look at guys like Penny and you look at guys like Geis and Barkley and all these rookie guys. How can they translate to playing against top level competition? But just real quick before we head out here, just a couple of guys I want to rattle off on guys we didn't talk about that we're expecting big years from because of what we see. Mitch Trubisky's one of those guys. I'm expecting to have a better season. Matt Stafford is another guy. We didn't bring up top-level guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Drew Brees and Big Ben and Cam Newton, because those are guys that we just expect to be good.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Those guys, they're great year in and year out, and there's no reason for us to believe they're not going to have great years, barring any injuries. Of course, you're going to hit a cold stretch from time to time, but those are guys you could basically rely
It's the
on
top of the
every
top,
week.
and I really couldn't get over everyone. We couldn't go and announce about every quarterback, but just guys that we thought were going to have a significance in where we thought their talent level was going to go. But any last thoughts?
Yeah, there just saw one guy I know we didn't talk about that I think is going to have another good year. He's not a top guy, but he's pretty good in my eyes. Jared Goff, he had a huge step last season. Rams, of course, defense is unbelievable and one of the best scoring offenses in the league last year. And with Todd Gurley, having a great running back makes quarterback playing much easier, especially for a young guy. And I think Jared Goff, he took a huge step last year, and I think he's only going to get better, and I expect great things from him again this year.
Definitely looking forward to seeing Jared Goff play, especially now. You know what? I really think you get even better in the receiving corps because I think you replace Sammy Watkins, who was a good number one receiver, to an even better number one receiver in Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
And I think everything's looking up forward for Jared Goff and a good system that Sean McVay's got him in. Obviously, Todd Gurley finally he got over that sophomore slump, pushed over the envelope, became one of the best running backs in football last year, and I'm really excited to see where the Rams go. There really should be a top level team to do going into next year. But all these quarterbacks, I'm really excited to see what they do. Obviously, we picked our rookies to see who is going to step up the biggest, make the most impact for their team. We looked at veterans we thought were going to be good. One we thought we're gonna fall off a little bit. Guys we thought was in jobs and troubles. Obviously, I went into the whole Russell Wilson case, and you know what? This is a guy that I think is going to get affected because of just the lack of talent around him. But that's going to do it for us with Nick Smith. Was our first podcast. We're going to try and upload a different episode every Wednesday. As just a basis, we're going to have a different topic next week. We'll let you know what that is next. When we upload the next one, we're going to discuss it. We're going to get it over. You can expect another podcast from us next week as we sit there and we plan it out.
Oh, no, certainly. I look forward to this each and every week. We'll have great topics every week, good discussion. It's just going to be a fun football season, in my opinion. No better sport in football in both of our eyes. Of course, we both played the sport for many years, and we have pretty good intel what's going on for the most part. And there's not many things better than talking sports and just having a good time.
Well, I can agree with you there. I don't want to wish away the summer because that means back to school, but definitely looking forward to September. First game, obviously, the Atlanta Falcons and the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday night to kick it off. But that'll do it. From Unnecessary Roughness, this is my co-host, Nick Smith. I am Justin Connolly signing off. We will see you next week.